Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the ProVideoPages webinar and podcast series. Today, I am joined by my friend, longtime friend, Bill Brelsford. And Bill is a CPA turned software developer turned marketing consultant. And he helps create B2B marketing strategies and implement them through sales-focused copywriting. Welcome, Bill.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And Bill and I met back in 2010 when we were
About
both
75 years ago.
exactly. When we were both youngsters, when we were part of the duct tape marketing consultant network. And
Right.
that was back in I think you actually dropped in and we had my training session in Kansas City. I
Oh
don't
yeah.
know if you
Yeah, it could be. I
um
used to go in when they were when the early trainings when they were local. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's been a little while, or as my daughter would say, a hot minute.
And
So
yeah. Yeah.
Um, anyway, what I'm so excited about what you're going to talk to us about today, which is basically creating a prospecting list leveraging AI. And as we were
Yeah.
talking about topics, this just seemed like one that would be really popular with our audience and one that they really need to hear about. And I love the way that you've done this. And I look forward to what you're going to share with us today.
Well, good. Yeah, I hope it'll be interesting. Like we talked about a little bit, I think AI focuses on writing or making fancy pictures,
Yeah.
which never came out for me. But I thought this was another way to use it. And in fact, what we're going to do today is kind of go through an example of how we actually used it for one of my clients to build a list for them to call. So just a couple slides to set some context. First, just probably the most important thing on this slide is that what we're talking about today is for businesses that actually go out and talk to prospects. It's probably not the best strategy for someone who might be 100% e-commerce or someone who, needs thousands of leads and hundreds of customers, that type of thing to make their business model work. So most of the people that I work with, like you mentioned, are B2B. They have a longer sales cycle. And again, that most important part is that they talk to people at some point during the sales process.
So would your ideal clients that I think they're similar to the Pro Video Page clients in that there's a fair amount of trust that's required before somebody signs on with them.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it is typically, like you said, because there's trust, because it's often a personal nature, like CPAs or attorneys
Hmm.
or other advisors. This part about put here about, what internet marketers would call high ticket sales. They're usually more expensive items, especially if they're selling equipment, or I have some people who sell equipment, or they sell training programs that may span a year or more. So they get to be fairly expensive. So they certainly do need to build that trust before anybody's ready to talk about actually making a purchase. So
Great. So this is both for a service and a significant physical purchase, B2B.
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I think it would. Yep. It would work for both. Yeah. Because I think a lot of those people who, even if they are selling a physical product, they're often what they're selling is their expertise and how to use that product to solve a bigger problem. So I think it fits.
Exactly. It's not just an off the shelf purchase. Here's your $50,000 widget thing. Okay, now that you've got this expensive piece of machinery, here's how it's going to be implemented in the business and systems changing, all of that. So, right, they are buying expertise and probably potentially training and implementation.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the particular client that was working on for this example is an online magazine, and they are in what's known as the First Coast region of Florida, which, if people aren't familiar with that, if they're watching later, it stretches pretty much from Jacksonville down to St. Augustine. I might have those boundaries off a little bit, but that's the general area. Excuse
Okay.
me. And so what the magazine does is there's a lot of artists and photographers and a lot of great creative communities in those areas. And so they share really beautiful images. You can see one of them here is one of their cover shots. And then they also help promote local businesses and tell the stories of the longtime residents and that type of thing. So it's sort of like a life magazine for the region, if you.
Hmm.
And what they wanted to do, what we were working on in this example, was to build a prospect list of people who might be sponsors or advertisers for the magazine. So the general approach that we're going to take to build this list was, uh, you know, obviously what we want to do is find businesses that want exposure to their audience, which is, again, small businesses. And in this case, we're doing mostly small businesses, but it'd be small businesses and individuals living in those areas. And the approach that we're going to take is we want to identify some of the top challenges by those people, and so that we could find businesses that can help solve those challenges in the hopes that they would be willing to advertise. And then while we're doing this, we want to start building a contact list so that we can start reaching out to these people. Does that make sense?
It really does, and I appreciate the focus on that audience first. You came at it from the audience perspective. They want access to that FCL or First Coast audience, and then you talk about the
Right.
challenges. It makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah,
Okay, good. So I think that's it. So I think with that, we can jump in and I can just show you what
perfect.
the prompts that we used and kind of the thinking behind it. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions as we go along. So,
Okay.
but the first thing I wanted to do was to make sure that the AI understood what the First Coast region was. So I just asked it, what are the major cities in that region? And it came back with a pretty good list. So these are pretty much the main areas. There's probably some missing, but this was a good start. And then, so now that it understood that, and sort of a secondary reason that I did this was I knew that I was going to want to organize our list by these areas so that when it came time to reach out to people, somebody could, like, we could attack all the Atlantic Beach leads at one time and then do the Neptune and then do, so on and so forth, so that we have a good way to organize and keep track of these things once we actually got to the prospecting part.
Great. I like that.
So then the next step was just to try to, and again, if you're a business owner, hopefully you have a good idea of what the challenges are. But I also find this helpful because one, it might raise up things that I hadn't thought of before. And two, it might give me another way or see another way of how people express those challenges that I might not have thought of before.
Hmm.
So this is just asking, so what are the biggest challenges faced by small business owners? And again, if your target was something different or something more specific, you could, you could say, what are the biggest challenges faced by remodelers or, what have you. And then we're just saying, in the beach communities, because as I'm up here, you'll notice we actually have Jacksonville and Jacksonville Beach, which if you're not familiar with the area, those are two very different areas and different, the demographics of the people who live at the beach are very much different than the people who live in Jacksonville, the city.
Okay.
So again, just say, what are some of the biggest that they challenge? And then this I find helps sometimes is to say, draw on examples and data. Or sometimes I'll say, like, try to use the words that business owners would use themselves or those types of things just to try to get a little better answer from AI.
So these examples, where are they pulling these from? Or where's ChatGPT pulling it from?
From what it's learned from the internet, I don't think on this one,
Okay.
um, but that's a great question. I didn't do it on this one, but on other times I've had that exact same question and I've actually said, I might have done it in an earlier version of this. Like I said, tell me or give me the top agents, and we'll get to that in a minute. And then
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, how did you determine that? And so it kind of went through and it will cite some information um, or sometimes it makes stuff up. So you have to be careful.
Yeah, I guess
and
like what
I,
hallucinating,
yeah, yeah.
but no,
So
that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, check the results and what where the citations are because sometimes they do make stuff up.
yeah. Okay, so we'll go through this, but anyway, you can see it came up with some issues, and so for this example, to keep things simple to get started, we decided to pick commercial real estate and staffing agencies because kind of getting back to what we're just talking about, we already knew that these were issues. So this was kind of confirming that we knew, especially labor shortages can be a problem in in these types of communities. And then of course, anything, near the beach, commercial real estate is. Plus we knew there would be several of those types of companies. And just from experience, we know we've seen these types of companies spending money on advertising before.
Mm-hmm.
So we just decided to start with those. So this is just more of those problems. So here's where I get into starting to create the list. And so, um, and as I mentioned before, I knew wanted to, as we started getting more information that we would need to keep this organized. So I asked it to create a table, excuse me, that showed, this is arbitrary. I just picked the top 2 staffing agencies for each city. And so as you can see, it did that. And I believe these are all real. And it showed us that we had one here that kind of branched different communities.
Mm-hmm.
And so that actually we have a couple there that branch different communities. So then we thought, okay, if we want to start contacting these people, we need some contact info. So let's try to get the phone number. Now this one looks, I haven't verified all these, but I have had an instance where it just made up phone numbers. It actually put a note down here that said the phone numbers are fictitious. But if you looked at them, and there might be some in here, I think it's in the next example, they would be like 555-1234. It's so we knew those could be, we would want to try to verify those and said, well, let's try to grab the URL to the website too, in case we want to click through and see if it's a good phone number or not. Or if we wanted to see other information like, names of owners or, just whatever general information somebody might want to find out. And again, they could always Google this, but here it was in one nice list.
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably it for that one. Does that make sense or does it
It
raise
does,
any
and
questions or?
I could see pulling additional information about each of these companies, right? And putting it into a table, and then you can download this as a or
Yeah, I was going to show
copy
that
this
after the
table.
next example, but
Perfect.
you sure can. Yep. So, yeah. So again, this isn't really, rocket science, but it can save a lot of time, especially if you're doing a lot of these, because as you can see in the next one, I got pretty lazy and still got some good results. So, uh, moving on to commercial real estate. So I just said, well, okay, do the same thing. Uh, except this time give me the top 3 and, do what you did before. And so, here we go again. It's kind of the same thing. Here's one of those fake phone numbers. um, and like you said, you could do, um, additional information if you wanted addresses or stuff like that. If I have some clients who work more in the commercial real estate piece, and so they actually go around and visit people. So for people like that, we might want to get physical addresses so that we could group them differently so that somebody could visit all the people like maybe in a complex or in a zip code or something like
Could
that.
could it also pull from their websites and list specific roles? I know a lot of times these real estate websites have all of their agents, and there's probably certain roles and titles that they're like broker versus agent or something.
Right.
Who's the
Absolutely.
broker?
Yes. Yeah, if it's there. And sometimes if it's there, if it's not there, it might just leave it blank. I've done that before with, can't remember, but who fills the role of business development or something like that. And
Right,
so,
right.
uh, or I've done another one where, for that commercial real estate, or they're actually, commercial floor care is what they do. And so I said, I tried to include the square footage of the building, and it didn't find a lot of those, but it did find a couple. So yeah, I think whatever is important to you in terms of building your prospecting list, then certainly just give it a try
Yeah.
and see.
Yeah.
That's really all I did with this is like, okay, well, can I get this? And so kind of along the lines of what you're saying, for some reason, this one sometimes, this is ChatGPT. Sometimes you'll get a response that says, where they give you two choices and they say, did you like response A or response B? And so whichever one I chose, for some reason, it decided to put it in a table and to list it out like this. So I
Okay.
don't know why that is. But so then I tried, similar to what you did, is I tried to say, well, tell me who the top agent is in the firm, because a lot of times in real estate, there's one or two star performers who make most of the sales. And they're also the people, and this might be more on residential, but they're also the people who are maybe a little bit more willing to spend money on advertising.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so we tried that. So we tried, okay, who's the top agent and their phone number. Um, and so again, uh, and putting this here, because this is something I would really want to like try to go to the website and verify, um,
Absolutely. Yeah. But it's
who
a
that,
heck of a lot easier to verify and
right,
edit than it is to build it for each one.
right. Yep. So I think that's really it. And then to get to the point that you just made, you can actually just say, I think of this one, I was nice and said, please, but I think the first time I tried this, I just asked a question. I said, can you do this? And it said, yeah, I can do this. And so I've already downloaded it here, I think. And so I just said, can you download that? I don't know how well you can see that. It kind
Yeah.
of made it jumbled. But anyway, the point being is, so then I could come in here and add a couple more columns to, to track who I called and who I talked to and so on and so forth. So,
All right.
um, so yeah, that was pretty simple, but I think, again, I think it, saves a lot of time. Like I said, we did two here, but if I wanted to go another one and do like, insurance agents, well, I could do that very quickly. Cause property, sorry for this fast scrolling there. Hope that doesn't make anybody seasick.
Well,
um,
and I'll share the prompts. I'll pick those up and it just, so basically this is all about bringing research to a different level. Long gone
right.
are those days when we'd go to the library and look things up or, those the business journals would have those lists. Now you can just focus it and really hone in, and then you can start making some judgments about and prioritizing who's worthy of calling first. What else do we need to search on? And I could see that this is more of like a living document, a living list and track it. And then some would probably will ultimately go into their CRM and their whole system for nurturing.
Sure. Oh yeah. 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 Like you said, this is just the start of building a list.
Yes.
So again, as we started, I just wanted to point out, I think, and this could be because I'm in the marketing field, a lot of people focus on the writing or creating images for Chat GPT, especially for copywriting. It's not always the best tool for the job. Whereas it is a good tool for researching, summarize, organizing, that type of stuff. Then the other point is, as we talked about, is just think of, and I'm saying Chat GPT, but this really applies to any AI tool. Claude, I probably actually use Claude more than I use this, but there's a ton of them out there. And again, I would think if you think of it as an assistant and a new assistant to your business, then, you always need to be checking its work and giving it guidance. And so I didn't have an example here, but if it gives you a wrong answer, correct it. You can correct it and give it some more guidance, and you'll usually get a better, if not fully correct answer once you do that. I think especially when you're building things the first time, to work one step at a time. So at the end, I kind of had like one big prompt that asked for all the stuff. But as you can see, when I was first figuring out what I wanted it to do for me, I was trying to take it one or two steps at a time. And you generally get better results if you do that. Again, almost like an assistant where you're teaching them step by step the job you want them to do. And then the last thing I just want to mention was a lot of this is just experimentation and trying things. AI, of course, is changing every day. These tools are changing every day. And something that you heard from a guru somewhere be needed or make sense. And just as an example, there's a lot of teaching, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but that tells you to give the AI a whole bunch of instructions to give it a role and give it a goal and tell it what to do. And as you can see, I never did that. And I still got good results. And I used to do that. And then one day I was just feeling lazy and said, I wonder what I'll get if I don't tell it. Don't tell it, pretend it's something. And it worked just fine. So I would just that mindset of just always play with it, try something new, and don't take something that you heard or read as gospel because things are just changing too fast.
I would agree with that. What about asking it to ask you questions if it has anything it doesn't know? In this case, I don't know what that question would have been, but before you give me the results, ask me any questions you have.
Yeah, I do that more with writing, but you could certainly do it with research. So, for example, I'll often, like, say, if you were trying to get it to help you write uh, a positioning statement for your product or service, then I often say, ask any questions if you need additional information.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, that would do it. Or in this case, if I was doing research, like I was pretty specific about the people I was looking for, but if I wasn't quite sure who I was looking for, so you might say something like, well, I've got a service that does X, Y, Z, and I'm trying to determine the people who would benefit from it the most. Can you create a list for me? Feel free to ask me any questions. And then it might ask you, okay, so and then it'll kind of ask you the standard marketing questions like,
Right.
okay, so what does it do? And what's the main benefit? And so it will ask you those things.
Yeah. This is great. It's basically, it's almost like learning. It's not a different language. It's just learning the lingo and the speak of how to get the results that you're looking for. And I think that when you go into a search or doing research, you have an idea, like you've mentioned, you have an idea of what you're looking for and taking that one step at a time to then say, aha, that got me to think about this. Maybe I could do that with it. And it's learning, but you're also learning along the way. And then, like you said, your second prompt with this, getting the commercial real estate was easier because of that after the staffing.
Yeah, because I told it, and you think about it, it would be like, again, if you had an assistant and they went through the process of doing that thing, building that list, and then you said, okay, go do the exact same thing, but now do it for commercial. And while you're at it, get one more piece of information, the top performer.
Thank you. Want to ask you a question. Has anything come of this research that, building this list for them?
We just did it. I think he's reaching out to the area that he is in, which is Atlantic Beach, which is the northern part. And then I think he's trying to find some people to help him in the other communities. And so that's been one of the things he's wanted to do for people who want to try it out, is to actually have instead of them trying to figure out for themselves who they should go to. I will be happy to report on that sometime later, but we literally just did this last week.
Let's put an update in the description as to the
Okay.
results. And
I'll get on him and tell him that he needs to make some sales.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate
Yeah,
you sharing that. It's really, I think, so helpful to see different examples and get you thinking differently because there's so much that this can do, and we understand that it's really changing how business is done.
yeah,
And I think if I would suggest anything for people is to start playing around with it because it's all about making life easier and getting richer information and being more efficient. So
certainly. Yeah.
yeah. Any last words?
Just, yeah, like you said, you got to learn it so that when Skynet takes over, we can talk to your overlords.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you very much for joining me. And everybody, if you want to learn more about what Bill does, you can hop over and click in the description to listen to the podcast that we've recorded. And I encourage you to take a look at our other episodes in the Pro Video Pages webinar and podcast series. And again, Bill, thank you.
Yep. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.